The Sega Dreamcast, what an amazing console, ahead of its time and gone way too soon, but still loved by many people all over the world today. And in this video I just wanted to talk about the Dreamcast, give it some love, talk about some of my favorite memories and favorite games that I had for the system growing up, and share a few stories as well. The Dreamcast was a console I feel like everybody wanted one when it came out, but nobody really bought them, sadly, because it failed and that was the end of Sega's console race. But man, it really was incredible. Those graphics, man, nobody could believe those graphics. Just seeing Sonic Adventure, man, it looked so amazing. And seeing Ready to Rumble boxing, I mean, compared to the N64 version, the Dreamcast version, it looked so beautiful, so crisp, so smooth. No chunky polygons. This thing looked absolutely incredible. So I remember those two games especially being on display in stores and stuff. You could play demos and stuff at the kiosk, and yeah, I always wanted one. Whenever I got a new console, it was a console that had been around for a couple of years at least, and the price had come down, and you know, by the time that happened for the Dreamcast, it was pretty much on its way out. It was discontinued so soon, and so it was really just not even on my radar anymore at that point. I thought, hey, I'm never gonna get a Dreamcast. Alright, move on. But to my surprise, I ended up getting one. And this was probably around like 2002, 2003 maybe? Probably 2002. It was my birthday. My sister decided to take me to GameStop. She told me, pick out any game for your birthday. I'm gonna get it for you. Happy birthday, you know? So I'm browsing the store, looking around, and I come to the Dreamcast section. There's still a little Dreamcast section, and there's just a stack of boxed, pre-owned Dreamcast consoles, and they were like, I want to say they were like $20 each. They were very, very cheap, and I was like, interesting. So I asked my sister, I'm like, hey, instead of a game, can I get this console instead? She's like, oh yeah, that's like cheaper than a new game. Go ahead, get some controllers too, get some games. So they had a bunch of controllers used. I think they were under $10. They had a bunch of games. I mean, not a lot of games, but they had a decent little selection of games, and a lot of them were under $10 as well. A lot of them were under $5. I don't remember exactly which games I walked out with, but I know we walked out with that Dreamcast, extra controllers, a VMU, and probably a few games. I want to say I got Soul Calibur, but that was amazing. I did not think I would ever own a Dreamcast. Here it was, you know, bunch of controllers, games, everything. I was so excited. That was an awesome birthday. Such a great birthday gift. I think part of the reason I don't remember exactly what games I got at that time was because I would go out very soon after with whatever birthday money I might have had, and I would be picking up whatever Dreamcast games I could find at an affordable price. And so I didn't have all the heavy hitters. I got whatever was left over at the stores post-mortem pretty much, but I got some good ones, and I really loved that console. I had such a good time with it. Had a lot of great multiplayer games, you know, the built-in 4 controller ports really made it a multiplayer friendly console. There were a lot of great games to play with friends and family, and that I did. If I had to pick a number one favorite game on the Dreamcast that I had back then, I think it would be Soul Calibur, for sure. That's just like the perfect fighting game. Even today, if you go back and play it, it still looks great, it still plays great, it's so smooth, it's perfect. It's a perfect fighting game. I think Soul Calibur 1 and 2 were my favorites of the series. 2 for sure was like the pinnacle, but the first one was fantastic. Some of the other obvious classics I had was Crazy Taxi. That was a game I played on the arcades like all the time. I loved that game, and it was so great to have really an arcade perfect port at home. No, you're not sitting in the driver's seat with the steering wheel and the pedals and everything, but man, it was so much fun to play at home, just like the arcades. Loved the music, everything. It was a perfect port at home. And the Dreamcast really is known for having those arcade ports. So many great arcade ports. I would have loved to have the Power Stone games. Those were a couple I never got to pick up back then. I think the price was already like out of my budget at the time, even though they were probably like $30 to $50 each. But I was picking up games that were like 15 and under at the time at the stores. Power Stone games were not really anywhere to be found, and I wasn't browsing eBay either, so like I say, a lot of those, top Dreamcast games of all times, they're not going to be in this video for that reason. But I did manage to pick up Jet Grind Radio. That's, of course, an iconic Dreamcast game. I love that game, man, and I still do to this day. There's no other game like it. I think it holds up really well, and of course there's an HD remastered version on PC and some of the consoles. I think during the PS3, Xbox 360 generation, it got that HD remaster. Still awesome game, great music, those graphics hold up thanks to the cel shading, that whole cartoony anime look. Just such a blast to play that game. Choo Choo Rocket was another one. This one I remember picking it up dirt cheap. It just looked interesting, it was something unusual. I love a good, unusual, quirky game, and this one is certainly that. Sort of a puzzle game. It had a great single player mode, and it's great with 4 players as well. It's a cat and mouse type of deal where you are trying to lead the mice to safety. You're trying to lead them around this screen by placing arrows on the floor, and that kind of directs them where to go. It gets really tricky. It can be really hectic and fast paced because you got all these enemies around and you gotta quickly put the arrows down, especially in multiplayer mode. There's a lot of different game modes too. Again, another game where there's really nothing else like it. Another classic, quirky game on the Dreamcast, Bass Channel 5. I was lucky enough to pick this one up. This was a game that I was really kind of embarrassed of. It's one of those games you don't want people to walk in on you playing because it's just a little weird. I mean, I think as a teenage boy, I just felt awkward playing this game, but it was so much fun. It's basically a Simon Says rhythm game. You have to remember your opponent's moves, and then you have to repeat them on the beat. It's a fun game. It had some catchy music, really funky, colorful graphics, and it's just a wacky game. It doesn't take itself seriously, but fun game all the same. Speaking of embarrassing, this is just another funny story, because I had been browsing Toys R Us and the games they had left on the Dreamcast, so I kind of knew what they had. I had like $20, and I remembered seeing this one game for $14.99, and I wanted to go back and pick it up while it was still there. It was a game I had heard was really good. It was a game I had played in the arcades, and this was a surprise to my dad. So I asked my dad, hey, can we go to Toys R Us? Can you take me to Toys R Us so I can get a game? He's like, okay. So he goes out of his way to take me to Toys R Us and get a game. That game was Virtua Tennis. And I just remember picking out the game, and my dad's like, we didn't really come out here just to get a tennis game, did we? Like, he was so disappointed in that moment, and I felt ashamed of myself for some reason. I just look at him, I'm like, yeah, this is what we came here for. We would end up playing that game together and having a good time, I think. It's a game that we played together in the arcades. When I was little, my dad used to take me to the arcades. We used to play games together, and that was one we would play here and there. I'm not really into sports games that much. Not really a big tennis fan, but that is a great tennis game. Everybody can agree on that, I think. It just felt great. It was so fun to play. It was very simple, but very fast-paced and great to play 2 players or even 4-player multiplayer. Yeah, my dad got over it, but that was just kind of a funny story, funny experience, like feeling so embarrassed of myself for picking that game. Speaking of sports games though, even though, like I say, I don't tend to gravitate towards sports games, the 2K sports games on the Dreamcast were really good. I was able to pick up a few of them like dirt cheap at the time. I think I had NBA 2K1, NFL 2K1, whatever the baseball game was that year. They were all really good. They still played very arcadey. They were very fast paced. They weren't too realistic, but they were realistic enough you felt like you were getting that authentic experience. Those games were all really great. They were all really fun. I really enjoyed those. But one of my favorite multiplayer games, this might be a little controversial, Unreal Tournament. I loved that game. I had so much fun playing that with my friends and with my dad as well, playing split screen deathmatch. It was too much fun. It's awkward today to go back, maybe because the controls, right? The Dreamcast controller only had one thumbstick, but I feel like they navigated this very well. They mapped the controls to feel really good and kind of similar to what you would get today with 2 thumbsticks. You'd use the left stick to move around, and you'd use the 4 face buttons to aim and strafe. So I think it worked really well. It still holds up today, kind of, if you can get used to it. It's easier than the Quake 3 controls, I will say that much. Unreal Tournament, I can still play that and enjoy that with those controls. Yeah, that was just a good time, man. All the weapons, the crazy weapons, it's just super fast paced. Just running around blowing up your friends. Good times, man. I think my friends enjoyed that as well. I had a handful of other games too, but nothing really all that noteworthy. You know, like I say, I would have loved to have had the Power Stone games, Skies of Arcadia, the Evolution games. I had a little wish list of games that I just never got around to, and now thanks to emulation, I could play those anytime I want, right? And games like the Sonic Adventure series, I would play those later on the GameCube. Didn't really get around to them on the Dreamcast. Some cross-platform games that I probably already had on the PS1 or another console. Dead or Alive 2, I would get into that later on the Xbox. So I mean, the Dreamcast has so many great games that are still a blast to play today, and some of them are super expensive. The cool thing about the Dreamcast though, if you want to play on original hardware and not spend a fortune, it plays burned games. No modding required. Just find the ISO, burn it on a disc, and you're good to go. Have a good time. Or just be like me and just emulate. Sadly, I sold my Dreamcast many years ago, along with a lot of my old consoles and games. And, I wish I hadn't, but it is what it is. Hopefully somebody else got some enjoyment out of those. And maybe I'll pick up another one one day. So we'll see. But I definitely still enjoy going back to a lot of those games today. And oh man, just such good memories. I still can't believe that I even got that console that day on that birthday. That was just such a surprise and a fond memory. Thankful to my sister for that, and just cherish those memories with my friends and with my dad as well. Such good times, and such an amazing console again. Before its time, gone too soon, but not forgotten. Anyways, let me know what are some of your favorite Dreamcast memories, favorite Dreamcast games. I would love to hear about it. May do some videos like this on other consoles too. It's fun to just reminisce and talk about old stuff like this. Old games, old memories. That's going to do it for today. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time. Take care.